sorry to be sending you this video, but I'm too lazy to type all this. I don't know if I told you about my eye, which is actually okay right now, but I told Joanne this the other day. So on my left when all the stuff's going on, I'm seeing people walking. It's the strangest thing. They're moving around, they're walking towards me. One of them reached out to me. It's the strangest thing, honestly. I'll have to tell you more about it on Monday, but it is like, I feel like I punched, something got punched. There's like some veil lifted from some parallel universe or something. I know it sounds insane, but it's very strange. Whether it's your first time here or if you're returning, welcome to my channel. So yes, this is a Christmas tree, and it is the first week of March and the Christmas tree is still up, but we're not going to talk about that because we're here to talk about me seeing dead people. Enjoyed that historic footage. It's kind of like a dreamlike look to it, but that's from, okay, so I keep telling you I live in an old prison. That's actually footage. I used to volunteer at the museum here, and that is old footage from the 40s that I would loop for visitors. And I was just always so fascinated by that film and that look back into the history of where I'm living. There's a reason I'm showing it to you. So let's talk about seeing dead people. Back in January of 2020, I had a stroke. And one of my early symptoms, I have to be honest with you, I didn't go to the hospital. I wasn't quite sure what happened. I have an unrealistic, but I just have this fear of doctors and hospitals, kind of like worse than anyone who knows me expects. And so the person I was staying with my oldest son and his family, and he said, "Mom, I think I should take you to the hospital." And I said, no, I just had a headache. I'm gonna lay down. So it happened on a Sunday. I didn't go to the doctor until 8 days later, the following Monday, when I got back home from Ohio, and symptoms had already started to set in. Not the usual ones, you know, like I didn't lose any mobility, or, you know, my face didn't droop, nothing like that. So you weren't really certain that you wouldn't look at me and know I had a stroke. Even today you wouldn't know I had a stroke, but I knew because of how I'm seeing the world, right? Early on in my stroke, I noticed the sky was huge, and I just actually, all I noticed was how tall everything, if I was outside, that seemed vast, just like big sky, right? And what started happening over the days was I noticed on my left, in the peripheral vision, that started to become a shadow, right? That was very noticeably absent, and I could not see anything approaching me, even people coming down the hallway. But then it started happening. I started seeing people. So they were standing next to me. One guy was dressed like a Babe Ruth type baseball player, and I don't know how to describe it other than that it's like it was like I was standing at a fence. I wasn't looking directly at him, so this was all going on in my peripheral vision. As a matter of fact, if I turned to look in that direction, I didn't see them, or they moved further. But so realistic. And this guy would walk out to the pitcher's mound, wind up, throw a pitch, come back towards me, and just kind of stand, right? Like, oh, all right, this guy's standing next to me. And then there was a guy in a uniform, like a gray, blue matching pants and a shirt, and he was working on a workbench. So he'd fiddle around with the tools, and then he'd come over and stand next to me, and he was working on something and go back and forth. And after a handful of days of this, I knew I was sane. I knew that I was here. I was in reality, right? But there was this whole, like I say in that video clip at the beginning, like a parallel universe. Things were going on over here. Very realistic things were going on right here. And it was quite distracting as I was still going to work. So it was hard to drive, hard to do all these things with activity going on. So I'm sorry if I'm all over the place with this story. Stroke on a Sunday. The following Monday, I went to my doctor. I called and said, hey, I need to be seen. I think I might have had a stroke. And so they got me in, and the doctor couldn't find any, there wasn't anything obvious and apparent. And he asked me why I thought I'd had a stroke. And I said, well, I have a family history. Hello, it's in the chart. And so I've kind of been expecting to have one. And that sounds terrible. That sounds terrible. But honestly, that's the first thing I thought when this happened. I'd had a stroke like my father and sister. Anyway, so he said to me, well, are there any other symptoms, anything else? And I said, yeah, I'm seeing people. And he didn't like that. He was just kind of sitting there, with his legs crossed. He had his, he was probably writing in my chart. I don't know. I doubt he made this entry, because he immediately said, okay, well, I'm going to call the retina specialist and get you over there. So off I went to the retina specialist, who ordered an MRI. He couldn't find, I think you can have a stroke in your eye. In the office, he ran some of those tests, but nothing was positive for any kind of damage to my eye. As a matter of fact, my vision was 20/20. So he sent me for an MRI, not that same day, but he said, go get an MRI. So this was a Monday, right? Well, when I got back to my office from those visits that day, I called my youngest son, and because he hadn't been looped in yet, and I told him, I said, hey, I think I've had a stroke. And I told him what had happened, just kind of caught him up, and I said, but here's the strangest thing, I'm seeing people. And so he asked me if I'd heard of Charles Bonnet Syndrome, and I said, no, I hadn't. And he said his grandmother, his paternal grandmother, had it in her later years. And so while we were on the phone, we looked it up, and guess what? Guess what? In Charles Bonnet Syndrome, guess what you see? You see people. And what Charles Bonnet Syndrome is, actually, I have something to read from, so let me do that so I don't mess it up for you. It's visual hallucinations caused by the brain's adjustment to significant vision loss, right? Well, I had just had a significant vision loss, right? So off I went for my MRI, right? People everywhere. I go to the MRI, and actually that little clip was me with my sweet daughter. She came with me. This was before all the COVID lockdowns, so she was able to come in with me for my brain scan. And, a day or two after that, I got a call back from the retina specialist who I'd gone to see, who ordered this test. And he told me that I had a venous malformation, and they were going to have to do brain surgery. I said, what? I'm scared to go to the doctor, let alone tell me we have to have brain surgery. I just said, wait a minute, there's something I didn't tell you. And I said, you know, I'm seeing people. I said, so to me, that tells me there's a part of my brain that's not working, you know? And he yelled at me. He said, you do not have Charles Bonnet Syndrome. That is for people with severe macular degeneration. That's for elderly people. You do not have that. And I was in tears by the time he was done yelling at me. And I said, look, I know you don't like that I looked on the internet and looked something up, but I'm telling you, I have a family history of strokes where people don't have, you know, major, you know, lasting effects from it. And I'm not talking TIAs. I said, so to me, that kind of helps us identify where the stroke might be. And he said, well, I'm going to send you to a neurologist. So off I went to a neurologist who I didn't even dare mention that I was seeing people. Anyway, he sent me to have testing done by a neuroradiologist. And that was with some dye injections. And so guess what the diagnosis was? I'd had a stroke in my right occipital lobe, which is the lobe behind your right ear. And what that does is that affects left vision, because my field of vision was gone on the left. Not just my left eye, right? But come to find out, both eyes lost the left field of vision. So the people eventually went away as my brain adjusted to this new way of seeing. I still have a blind spot, although an ophthalmologist told me that I was extremely lucky when he did my field vision test. He said, because most people he's seen who had that kind of stroke, all right, let's see if I can draw it. It's like a pizza, right? And your pupil's in the middle. So let's say a quarter of that pizza, that entire section of vision is gone. So for me, it's just the peripheral, but it's on both eyes. Yeah, and so I wanted to come on here and tell you about Charles Bonnet Syndrome, because one of the things about it is, you know, you don't really want to tell people about it because it's it makes you, it's kind of, hallucinations are associated with mental illness. Let's put it that way. And I am here to tell you that I was perfectly sane. I knew I was sane. I knew when I explained to people what was happening that those people were not actually right there with me. But it sure felt like and appeared as though they were. I knew it wasn't real. And so I was very grounded in reality, but yet all of this distraction was going on while my brain was figuring things out. And so it happens when you have a sudden vision loss. And my dear friends, if you are having hallucinations and you've had a severe vision loss or any kind of vision loss, right? If you're seeing people, but you are grounded in reality, you need to bring this to your doctor's attention, because it is pinpointing something that your brain is having to work extra hard now. I just, my ophthalmologist that I went to, the final ophthalmologist in the whole year and a half of my stroke treatment, I told him about it because I went for a field vision test, and I told him about it and what the Charles Bonnet Syndrome. And so I had a heart-to-heart with him. I said, listen, 2 doctors just dismissed me telling them, but in the end, it would have been helpful if they knew it wasn't a macular degeneration thing. And I told that doctor, actually, he turned around in his chair and started to look it up on his computer. And so we were reading about it, and he said, you know, he said he didn't realize. And I said, yeah, so if a client, well, I guess they're not a client, they're a patient. If a patient comes to you and talks about hallucinations, know that it has something to do with the brain, you know, the way the brain is processing vision. It may not be that the brain is damaged. It may be that the eye is the source of the damage and the brain is dealing with that. But I don't know. I just really hope that this helps someone out there. um, because I I don't know, I felt like it was something critical for people to know, and they dismissed me. And there's nothing worse than that, quite honestly, than being dismissed when you're scared to death about everything that's going on with you and your health, right? Well, let's talk about the footage that I'm sharing from the prison. Because, you know, when you're seeing these people, when you read about Charles Bonnet Syndrome, they just don't really know why people see what they see. But I can tell you that given those uniforms, it's almost like it was, I was seeing people from those videos. Obviously, I didn't have a personal memory about the 1940s. But it totally was. It's the brain is an amazing thing. So what? Like, you know, somehow all of that was imprinted on my brain. I don't know. It's fascinating to me, honestly. And another interesting thing, my father went through a period of years where he was having, you know, many, you know, just strokes. One, not immediately after another, but he was having multiple strokes. And one time he called me, maybe I called him, I don't know. I was talking to him on the phone. It was probably in the 90s, early 90s, before the internet was really out there. And he'd had multiple strokes, and gosh, man, so blessed, right? Didn't have the paralysis and all of that. So, but he did have some vision problems. But one time when he had a stroke and he was in the hospital, I called, and he was telling me he was doing well, and that he said, but you know, Chris, he said, there's this woman who comes, she visits me, and she brings me a tray of food. And I said, well, yeah, Dad, that's probably the hospital staff bringing you the food. And he goes, no, she just kind of puts the tray down, you know. And I said, okay. And then he told me about, and you know, there's a big truck. There's a big truck. And he said, there's a man with an organ grinder with a monkey. He said, it's the strangest thing. And I said, well, Dad, do they have you on any kind of medication? And he said no, and he didn't sound mentally ill. He didn't sound disturbed. He just was saying it was the strangest thing. Well, when I got done talking to him, I called the nurses station at the hospital and asked them, I said, do you guys have him on any medications that would make him have hallucinations? And they said no, and I said, okay. And here we are. Here we are, right? I'm, you know, having a stroke, following in my father's footsteps, and I am convinced that he was experiencing Charles Bonnet Syndrome. I am absolutely convinced of it. So yeah, if you know someone who's talking about you know, seeing people, I'm going to link an article that one of my sons sent me. I don't know if it's from the New Yorker or the New York Times, but I will put that link in the description box. So yeah, anyway, I just wanted to share it with you because I think it's fascinating. And gosh knows, I don't know how many people are out there afraid to mention it because people are gonna think they're crazy. We're not crazy. We were just seeing dead people. That's all. Everyone, have a wonderful week. I want you to take care, and I'll see you next time. Bye.